This episode of Bullet Heaven was made possible by Degica Games. In Bullet Heaven HD episode 131, we took a look at Shooting Love 2000X, a compilation of 4 awesome triangle service games via Xbox 360 Games on Demand. We also took a look at the newly rebranded Shmup Skill Test, the first wave of 4 as part of Degica Games' Shooting Love 20XX series on Steam in episode EX29. Wave 2 is now upon us, and now players can download the minimalistic and highly conceptual -0, a shooting game with lock-on style shooting gameplay. Let's take a closer look. -0 is probably the least complex of the Shooting Love games so far, and it's really just an experimental game that was seemingly thrown into the original 2000X release to fill out the package. The game's concept is pretty simple. With only a single life, players take on ever more difficult waves of opposition until they die. Using a small reticle in front of their triangular craft, players can shoot homing shots at their opposition, but they can only shoot when they lock onto a foe. When shooting and when larger explosions are occurring, your ship will change from blue to red. When this is happening, you'll be invincible until you're blue again. The opposition has a great many different behaviors depending on the wave, and, in a lot of ways, -0 is a puzzle game more than it is a shmup, since there are very specific ways to take out these enemies in a super efficient manner. As each wave goes on, enemies' fire will intensify, giving players less and less room for error. At the very least, enemy shots can also be locked on and shot. Eventually, a single red enemy will appear which, when shot, will end the stage. From there, it's on to the next round. That's pretty much all there is to it. 8-way movement, 1 single shot button, lock on, fire, and dodge. The gameplay is super simple. However, there is a bit more than meets the eye to the scoring. Scoring is basically done directly through enemy destruction. Basically, the more the better. However, there's actually a bit of hidden risk-reward to the scoring system in -0. As players continue through the game, the score value for each individual enemy climbs over time, indicated in the bottom of the screen. If a player can get the round they're in to last as long as possible before progressing, the enemies will be worth more earlier in the game, though again, the values climb over a constant time frame regardless of the wave. Despite the overall simplicity of the game, there's plenty of replay, especially with the online leaderboards. These leaderboards are instantly accessed and updated when a player scores higher than their best, and their position to the worldwide leaderboards is made instantly available. As with the gameplay itself, the presentation in -0 is as basic as it gets, with a couple of exceptions. The visuals in particular scream vector-styled, with low poly and vectored backgrounds giving -0 a Vectrex on crack look and feel. There are no rotation options though, and no real background either. And no real background or full screen mode either, just a small window that can be increased in size if the player needs it. When enemies get busted though, a crazy amount of bloom will fill the screen, making things look super cool, but also hiding a lot of hazards too. This is -0's critical fault. All too many times, players will get caught by an enemy or their shots simply because they couldn't see it coming through the dense haze of bloom. Even with a period of invincibility, there will be times that you just can't see whether you've changed back to blue, and it could cost you the round. Sound-wise, the effects used are totally appropriate, though again, pretty basic. Meanwhile, the music starts building with every subsequent wave, starting with Wave 2. Aside from that, well, that's all there is to -0. It's a fun little score chaser that isn't without its faults. But how does it stack up? Let's take a look. sharp and pretty accurate, there isn't much to say about the controls in -0. They definitely do the job, but not being able to see where you're going amidst heavy chaos hurts. With only a single life, -0 is plenty challenging. How far can you go? -0 goes as far as the player can, and online score chasing is pretty fun, but a player's interest might be tested regardless. In terms of visuals, everything is super minimalistic here. Vector-style graphics and low-poly backgrounds are neat, but bland. And the insane bloom lighting can make things tricky to see. The sound effects all work well for where they are used. Music is again pretty minimal, but builds with each new wave. The hidden risk-reward for scoring is pretty clever, and the idea of lock-on only shooting gameplay is pretty neat, but the special effects really hamper the experience. -0 is still a fun game in the very end. There are obviously issues with the amount of bloom getting in the way of critical elements like enemies and their shots, but the game is still more than playable. -0 gets a 3 out of 5. At the very least, -0 is very easy on the wallet. It can be had for just $2 US. Sell some Steam trading cards, get a neat game.